Okay, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for tonight, which is April 9th, 2025, with author David Krell. David's going to be talking about baseball in America in the disco era in 1978. We're going to hear about the season and about Alvin, who used to play for the Giants in New York and, of course, was the manager for the San Francisco Giants. Just want to wish everybody a happy Passover, a happy Easter. We will have no meeting next week. We will reconvene in 2 weeks with Jason Cannon, who wrote a brand new book on Willie McCovey and Billy Williams.
It's awesome.
Thank you. In May, we will return to May being the month of Willie Mays. We have speakers lined up: Chris Spire, John Shea, Pat Gallagher, John Miller, and possibly myself. So we will discuss this as we get closer. Look for a new mailer regarding the rest of the year guest speakers. Should be coming out shortly. I sent out a note regarding if anybody was interested in chipping in for a brick at Oracle Park. I will make a note, an email regarding all the specifics to get enough people. I would think we need about 45 people to contribute, maybe $50. We do that, we're good. If we don't do that, it's an idea that passed. That's all. Before David speaks tonight, I would like to introduce two people to you. Both of them have something to share with you. I'm going to share my screen. So let's just do this before we do anything else. Let's see how I can get there. Okay. I'd like to introduce to you, if I can get, there we, is it? No, hold on. Yeah, Eric Romo. Eric, the floor
Yes, sir.
is yours.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Hey guys, appreciate you guys having me on. This is great. You know, I'm a big history buff, and I love baseball. San Francisco Giants is the team that I've been rooting for ever since I was a kid. And a few years ago, I helped start up a YouTube channel with Dan Coach Emilio. Some of you guys may or may not be familiar with him. He does NorCal Sports Network. He covers a lot of the Giants and also Northern California sports teams. But last summer, I got in with another guy, got my own channel there, Giant Sports Talk Live. Man, in the off season, we were on every day just talking Giants. And now that the season has started, we do post games after every game. Like tonight, as a matter of fact, today, well, we're going to go live right around between 8:30 Pacific. And again, we just break down the game, talk Giants, and just have fun. I love interacting with everyone. If you come into the chat, I will talk to you. I just love having that interaction with people. It's just something I enjoy doing. It's baseball, right? It's a conversational sport, and what better way to do it than get on YouTube and share it with everyone?
And Eric, what do you do on Sunday evenings?
On Sunday evenings, we work with NorCal Sports Network, and we have a show called The Hot Corner. There's four of us, Dan, and he'll have his co-host, and then myself with Glenn. And again, we just break down. Usually on a Sunday, it's usually you're wrapping up a series. So we usually do a series recap. But again, it's just more Giants talk, with just more voices in the room, so to speak.
Okay, so wonderful. We wish you the best of luck. And, Eric will be on later tonight, and everybody will be happy. So there is the name on the YouTube channel. And if anybody can't figure that out, just contact me, and I'll get you in the right place. Eric, thanks so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Before we go to David, I want to introduce Mr. Seelig. Dieter, floor is yours.
How are you guys doing? So I don't know. I think I might have met some of you gentlemen before, perhaps, maybe not. But people were asking me, who is this young guy? Well, I'm the owner of Affinities and here in New York City. And we, unfortunately, those who know about us, we opened in 2009. And due to the pandemic, we closed in 2020. It was a bit of a shock to have to close just a month after the 49ers Super Bowl and everything like that. But after a few years of looking and last year of work, we're very excited to announce that Finnerty's is back here in New York City. Yeah, there's a little shirt. And so, yeah, we are back. And honestly, I think we're better than ever. And I'm really excited for everybody to come to New York City and visit. We've been open for about the last month or so in a soft opening mode. But we've already gotten New York Giants fans, San Francisco Giants fans back into the bar over here. We have some pretty cool stuff. We really wanted to make a bar for 2025. Those who had been to Old Finnerty's, it was in the East Village. And now we're actually in Midtown opposite the Empire State Building in the former Foley's space, which was a huge baseball bar. And so we basically looked to keep all the things that mattered in that space. There was a subsequent owner who had really just screwed up that space. So, but we kept the original floors and the urinals, and we have some really, really cool stuff to show you. I think Gary has a couple pictures, but we were actually able to put up, believe it or not, this is the pennant from the New York Giants 1951 Yay! National League Championship. So this is, we received it in 2016, and we always wanted to display it. But yeah, when you guys are in New York, we really want, this is the pennant from the shot heard around the world. And the intention is to have this here with us for view for free for any baseball fan, Giants fan. We've actually had it completely restored by museum quality archivists and fabric conservationists. And it's now being, instead of stored in a garage for the last 40 years, it's actually now behind UV plexiglass, safe, protected. And yeah, so I'm first and foremost welcoming everyone to please come by Finnerty's. We're here in New York City. We're open. We have food. We just got the gas hooked up today, actually. So we're hoping to have food in the next couple days and hopefully in time for the Yankee series. And also, I'd asked Gary a little bit. We're also looking if anyone happens to have any photos of the pennant. Where my insurance guy is actually trying to insure this, which would mean a lot to us, obviously, because we know it's a very important piece of history. So if anyone actually happens to have any photos of any of the Giants pennants from the 50s, we would love to get that over. You can talk to Gary and pass that along our way. But first and foremost, the most important thing, I just wanted to say that Finnerty's is back. We welcome New York Giants fans, San Francisco Giants fans, and hopefully we'll be having some in-person meetings. We spoke a little bit earlier about that, Gary, about having some in-person meetings here in New York. It's a big space. We have a beautiful little private bar downstairs that we would love to host you guys. And yeah, so hopefully between book signings, we're hopefully having some guest bartenders from current and former San Francisco Giants players. And you're all welcome to come. And I'd love to see you all there. So I don't want to take up any more time.
What's your location?
What is the exact it's a real thrill for us to be back. And Peter, it's something we've worked on a long time. So we hope you're excited to
Peter, give the exact address. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you give them the exact address?
Yeah, so sorry. It's 18 West 33rd Street. It's directly opposite the Empire State Building. So it's between 5th and 6th Avenue. It's accessible by the 6 train, F train, Q train. We're only 2 blocks away from Penn Station. So if you walk east on 33rd Street and just look for the Empire State Building, and you'll see us directly across from it, 18 West 33rd Street.
You know, my father worked at 303 Fifth Avenue, which is right across the street from the Empire State, but at that location that you just mentioned, at the corner of 33rd and Fifth Avenue, right there.
Sure.
So, and he was a big New York Giant fan, may rest in peace. So when I'm in the city, I live in Jersey. In fact, I'll be in the city tomorrow night for my wife's birthday, but we're not going to have time to stop off at Finnerty's. It's a Broadway show. We have to get there on time.
Peter, I went to the Giants-Mets games with you. Yeah, are you going to arrange those again?
Yes, Gary?
Peter, we wish you the best of luck. And for all those here, before we turn it over to Dave, we used to have our live meetings at Finnerty's, and then COVID came. So I'd like to have maybe 1 or 2 meetings where we all get together, whoever can in the city. And we're hoping to do that roughly around July 30th, right before the Mets come into town. And I believe either this week or next week, Alex Pavlovich is doing a whole write-up on Dieter and the bar. So again, Dieter, congratulations and best of luck, really.
Thank you so much for having me, Gary. I appreciate
So
it.
if we want to just send you pictures, we can do that. Is that okay?
He wants pictures of the banner.
Okay.
Okay.
I could send him a picture of a 1922 World Series ring.
He wants pictures of the banner to validate what he has up in the restaurant.
Yeah,
Okay, Charles?
yeah. It's been very hard actually to find images. We have some images of the polo grounds, and you can see pennants that are hanging up and flying. But unfortunately, up close images, even opening day 1952, have been a little difficult finding. So we're just trying to make sure that it's a piece of history and it's properly protected and insured.
Have you tried
any arrangements for games for Giants and Mets like you used to do?
Yes. So we actually, they will be for sale, I believe, in the next 4 or 5 days. We'll be doing buses out for the August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd games with Citi Field. We were trying to do it with the Yankees. Unfortunately, the Yankees have a new policy about they're trying not to have large groups of opposite fan bases at the stadium. So
ridiculous. How pathetic.
Yeah. So
sounds like Trump. Sounds like Trump.
Oh, come on.
You're as arrogant as always. Yankees
All right.
Peter,
Let's get
how do
rolling.
we
As
get the shirts?
David has been very cordial in letting everybody speak. So why don't we all welcome David Krell? David, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Very much.
The floor is yours. Did I record this? Yes, I did. Good. We're good.
Thank you. I'll split the presentation into 2 parts, and it will be somewhat brief, maybe about 20 minutes or so, maybe even less than that. Alvin Dark will be the first topic, and then the book at large will be the second topic. Certainly, the people in this room can speak with much more gravitas and eloquence and expertise about Alvin Dark than I can. So I'm just going to come at this from a different direction. He's in the 78 book briefly because he got fired by the Padres during spring training. Very rare for a manager to get fired during spring training. I think it only happened once before. So let's just recap a little bit about Alvin Dark's managerial career. He was the manager of the Giants from 61 to 64. He led the Giants to the NL pennant. You all know that there was a 3-game playoff in 1962 against the Dodgers. In the 70s, he had a bit of success with the A's. In 1974, he leads the A's to the World Series title. In 75, another AL pennant. The Red Sox beat the A's in the playoff, of course. He also managed the Indians. Now, I did a little digging because I got curious. He was the 3rd manager, if I'm not mistaken, of the 77 Padres. That's also a rarity for a team to have 3 managers during one season. It seems that he was the manager during most of 77. The Padres record that season, 69 and 93. Dark's record as manager, 48 and 65. So it pretty much tracks with what the team was doing. I wanted to see what he was dealing with in terms of his team. Now, I figured I would see a team that was lacking in offense. I was mistaken in that assumption, because if you look at the 77 Padres, Dave Winfield, 275, George Hendrick, 311, Gene Richards, 290, and Mike Ivey, 272. The problem seemed to be in the pitching. Bob Shirley goes 12 and 18. Bob Ochinko goes 9 and 12. Randy Jones, a year after people are touting him as a potential 30-game winner, goes 6 and 12. The bright spot, of course, is Raleigh Fingers. He leads the major leagues with 35 saves, 69 games finished, and 78 games total. Now, let's talk a little bit about Alvin Dark, the player, because I'm not sure, I'm not well-versed enough to say that he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But I will say that he belongs in the conversation. And I'm dumbfounded why I don't hear more about him in terms of the Veterans Committee, in terms of people advocating for him, when I have these types of conversations at SABR conventions or the Cooperstown Symposium or the 9th Spring Training Conference. His name doesn't seem to come up too often, if at all. Well, if you compare him to the other 2 post-World War II shortstops, one is an interesting debate, one is not. Pee Wee Reese obviously belongs in the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's a dispute there. But if you compare him to Phil Rizzuto, let's look at that comparison for just a little bit. Dark plays in 1946 and then 1948 to 1960. Rizzuto plays 1941 and 42. The next 3 years, he has military service, World War II, and then 1946 to 56. Dark has almost 2,100 hits. Rizzuto has just about 1,600, 1,588 to be exact. Dark has 757 runs batted in, Rizzuto 563. Here's where it gets interesting. Dark's average lifetime, 289, pretty close to the magic number of 300. In the World Series, 1951, he bats 417. In 54, he bats 412. Rizzuto's lifetime average is 273. His on-base percentage is a little bit better, 351. Dark's is 333. Rizzuto's slugging percentage is 355. Dark's is 411. Dark also was a 3-time All-Star, as you know, and won Rookie of the Year. Rizzuto won an MVP award. So why isn't Dark in the conversation? Why wasn't he touted way back when, after he retired as a player? Why wasn't he talked about in those years, in the 5, 10, 20 years afterwards? Well, I was thinking about it today, and I came up with a hypothesis. I have no empirical evidence. I have no quotes. I have no inside information. This is purely speculative. But I wonder if there was a puritanical judgment against Dark's personal life. As a comparison, I'll use Steve Garvey. Steve Garvey, I think, definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame, but he had some personal issues, family issues, and while I don't have any evidence to prove it, my gut tells me that there was, at that time when Mr. Garvey was eligible, a certain puritanical view of ball players. Couple that with the book Cooperstown Confidential, which outlines some horrible behavior by Hall of Famers in the past. Well, Mr. Dark committed the wrongdoing, for lack of a better word, of falling in love with a woman who wasn't his wife. And they had an affair and later got married. He wrote about this in his memoir. He wrote about it in other articles. It's been mentioned several times. It's not a secret. The conflict became with his devoutness. He was a devout religious man, but he admitted he was flawed, as we all are. We're all flawed. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We're human. We're built that way. Hopefully we learn from them. But he found love with someone else. And I do wonder if that behavior, if that part of his life affected the writers. Again, I have no way of knowing, but it's interesting that he's not even in the conversation. And Garvey, who certainly should be in the conversation, wasn't. And I hope someday the Veterans Committee puts both of them in. Regarding the book, some other items of baseball note: Pete Rose's 44-game hitting streak is chronicled. The debut of the Reggie Bar is chronicled. Billy Martin leaving the Yankees midway through the season. I did not realize how many Yankees were unhappy by the tension in the clubhouse. They didn't want to be there the next year in '79. This is documented. It's in the newspapers. So it's not some blind quote where it's, I'm unhappy, I'm leaving next year, says an unnamed Yankee. No, their names are all over the newspaper reports. The Yankees' comeback against the Red Sox obviously is documented. The 4-game series we all know as the Boston Massacre, when the Yankees clobbered the Red Sox at Fenway Park, 4-game sweep. The first 2 games they decimated, and certainly the Boston fan base was demoralized. The Bucky Dent home run in the 1-game playoff. The teams are tied at the end of the season, so there's a 1-game playoff for the AL East. Bucky Dent hits a homer. Reggie Jackson hits a homer. That game was actually on a Jewish holiday. So a lot of people went to synagogue and then came home, and they could watch it in the afternoon. It was a different time. Today, that game would be promoted, heavily promoted in prime time, and it would be a spectacle. Back then, not so much. And the game didn't have to last 3 hours as games do today. Pete Rose leaving Cincinnati for Philadelphia. I was surprised to learn that there were many other teams vying for Pete Rose, and they were all competitive. He could have gone to Atlanta. He could have gone to Pittsburgh. There were a lot of teams, and even the Mets were rumored at one point to be throwing their hat in the ring. And I think it was more than just a rumor. But he wanted to go with a competitor. He wanted to go with a contender. And you'll recall the Phillies teams of the late 70s were so powerful, and Rose just added to that power. In terms of what was going on in the culture, it was a groundbreaking year. There was a movie, tame by today's standards, but back then it was groundbreaking. An Unmarried Woman with Jill Clayburgh, symbolizing female independence. Her husband, who's a financial executive, dumps her for a younger woman. She has to navigate dating and work and friendships without someone to come home to at night. And it's sad, it's gut-wrenching, it's uplifting. At the end, he goes back to her, he grovels, and she says, "No dice, I'm good. I'm going to continue on my journey." In terms of nostalgia, that was big in 78. I talk about American Hot Wax, which was about Alan Freed, circa 1959. Alan Freed, the famous DJ who popularized rock and roll. The Buddy Holly story came out that year. Animal House, set in the early 60s. Happy Days, a top 10 show set in the late 50s. And my thesis is that after the mid 70s, people needed to go back to a simpler time and remember what life was like before the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War ended in the mid 70s. Nixon resigns in the mid 70s. Only time a president has ever resigned, many of his aides going to prison. The country was kind of beat up psychologically. And then you had disco, and disco was a chance for people to have fun. Who can't have fun with a disco song? Who can't have fun on the dance floor? It's just a fun time musically. Disco dominated popular culture. You couldn't turn on a top 40 station without hearing Donna Summer. And she also made a guest appearance, well, I should say guest appearance, a cameo appearance in the movie Thank God It's Friday. And some might say it's more than a cameo because she is in scenes throughout the movie, but she sings Last Dance, and that popularized the song as well as the airplay that it got. As far as TV, we had premieres of WKRP in Cincinnati and The White Shadow. People remember The White Shadow fondly. It only lasted 3 seasons, but again, groundbreaking. It showed a series of Black characters, 3-dimensional, all had their different personalities, treated them without any stereotypes whatsoever, and some hard-hitting issues, gambling, alcoholism, teen pregnancy, teacher-student relationships, teacher burnout, child abuse, all covered eloquently and artistically in this show, which was created by Gwyneth's father, Mr. Bruce Paltrow. WKRP in Cincinnati was about a radio station, an AM rock and roll station in Ohio, of course. People make the mistake, I know I used to, of thinking that WKRP was inspired by the movie FM, which is impossible because FM came out in 78 and you can't put together a TV show in just a couple of months. So it was already on the drawing board for Hugh Wilson, who created WKRP. They just happened to coincide with each other. FM is available on YouTube, and it's a movie about a rock and roll station called Q Sky in Los Angeles. Some other things that happened of note, we had the Mideast Peace Accords, and I'll close with one of the most important events for Giants fans, I suppose. Mr. McCovey gets his 500th home run. So that is that is the summary of the book and my feelings about Mr. Dark. And I'm delighted to answer any questions that you might have.
David, first of all, again, the book, best way to get it.
The best way to get it is Amazon or the University of Nebraska Press website. And I will tell you that Nebraska is offering a 40% discount on baseball books. It's not going to last forever, but I highly encourage you to go and lock in that discount. Father's Day is around the corner. Get your gifts early and get something for yourself as well.
And David, I'm going to mention a few things, but I got to tell you, I love when you come on and it's not all about baseball. I love when you talk about the culture, what was going on, because this is all stuff that I lived through. So I very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
Two things, and then Alvin Dark. I think I was at the Pete Rose game against the Mets. I believe Pat Zachary might have broke his ankle during that streak. I think he gave up a hit number. Maybe it was number 40. I don't remember. Or maybe that was Zachary's uniform number. But I remember being at the Met, maybe number 44. I don't remember, but I remember that year that I went to the Met game. And of course, the Reggie bars being thrown out to Reggie at Yankee Stadium. That was the event. I can't speak for this because I was too young, but you mentioned about Alvin Dark's affair. I think that a lot of the Giant fans, especially the ones in San Francisco, would wager that he probably got more in trouble for his saying nasty things about Latinos on the Giants.
Yeah, there was some of that, and I don't think that bled over though. That's what my gut tells me. There's some kind of puritanical streak that's unwritten, it's never talked about. But so many guys in the Hall of Fame had personal problems with alcohol, with the law, and had nothing to do with their ability on a baseball field. I mean, if we judge by a certain standard, Babe Ruth's not in. Mickey Mantle's not in. So what are we doing? And I'm not saying that he automatically belongs. That's for better baseball minds than I have. But it seems to me that if you have a 289 average, you belong in the conversation. At least let's talk about it. And I hope the Veterans Committee does take a look at his overall career and contribution.
Again, Dave, thanks so much. Great. Mars, you're first.
Well, thank you, David. Gary brought it up, and we're also all aware of the controversy with playing Latin music with Orlando Cepeda and the Latin players. And of course, Willie Mays stuck up for him. My first question is, do you have any information whatsoever where any of the Latin players felt that Willie Mays betrayed them by sticking up for Alvin Dark?
Gosh, no, I because I was focused mostly on his dismissal from the Padres. And I just got curious about Dark's career. I'd heard of him. I didn't know too much about him. And the more I researched, I made a note to myself, I have to email Gary and see if his group would be interested in a talk about this, because I know he's with a lot of different teams, but he's mostly associated with the Giants. And why he was dismissed, I just want to say this dovetails with what you're talking about regarding conflict. I saw an interview with Ray Kroc. There was some news excerpt from relating to the dismissal. It's on YouTube. And the reporter interviews the Padres owner, Mr. Ray Kroc, and he says, quote, "A lack of teamwork, cohesion, and some question of revolt in the locker room of the Padres. I saw it beginning to fester." It seems that there was a communication problem between Dark and the players. I don't have too much more information beyond that.
Well, the second part of that has to do with hypocrisy, where no matter who you follow, whatever religion you follow, there's hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So, when you have the born again Christians, which I think Alvin Dark was part of that, faith, We've seen like the Tammy Baker,
Yeah.
Jim and Tammy Baker scandals and all that. There's all this hypocrisy. There's hypocrisy in baseball uh, as far as gambling, where Pete Rose and Joe Jackson were banned, and you got FanDuel now. So
Yeah.
it's never ending. So,
Yeah. That,
I mean,
that's come up.
what are your feelings on that?
Well, that's come up a lot, Mars. I was telling some people when I grew up, the idea of a professional sports team being in Las Vegas was akin to putting a professional sports team on Pluto. It was never going to happen. It was never going to happen. You could not have professional sports that close to Vegas. And now we have, or we're going to have three teams. The A's are moving. We have the Raiders there, and we have the Golden Knights. It became corporate. I think that's a big reason Vegas is now buttoned down. It's not like it used to be. It's run by corporations, and there's much more money. The Vegas that existed 50 years ago is not the Vegas that exists now. The Vegas that existed 30 years ago is not the Vegas of today. The population has grown in a terrific manner, so they can support a professional sports team.
There's only one thing about baseball compared to football and hockey. Uh, Football and hockey are indoors. There's only 8 or 9 football games. There's only 40 hockey games, and it's indoors. That's why baseball won't draw in Vegas, and the team's going to be worth a lot more money, and Fisher will sell them in a few years.
I disagree on this point because you will have the same issue slash problem that you have in Miami, where sometimes you have more fans in the stands for the opposition, the Cubs, the Phillies, the Mets, than you do for the home team. You'll have snowbirds in Vegas, people who are retirees. You will have, well, not snowbirds. I'm sorry. You'll have retirees. You might have people who retire in Tucson or Phoenix and jet up or drive up for a weekend. You'll have people coming from Chicago or Philly or New York and saying, hey, let's make a weekend of it. And you go to the game, you go on the strip. That's what they want. That's why the stadium's there, because they're figuring on a lot of tourism. They're not.
I agree on that.
Right in the middle of the city.
I agree with that. There's only one thing. You got the shows and the gambling where people are going to be out there pretty much in the evening. So it's an open-ended stadium. It's not air conditioned. So people would rather go to the shows and gamble.
Well,
and if the games are at night, they're not going to go to the ballpark, baseball park at night.
Well, we'll see, because the locals probably don't go to the shows.
Right.
The locals will go to the ballpark.
We'll see.
We'll see. It's going to be very interesting.
Thank you,
Thank you, David.
Mars.
Thank
Harvey,
you.
you are up.
Gary,
Yes, Frank.
can you see me?
No, we can't, Frank.
All right, I'll have to check but you
All
can't
right.
hear me. Of course you can hear me.
Yes,
Okay,
we
thanks.
can. Harvey, you're up.
Okay,
No.
David, thank you very much for bringing back the memory to me of Alvin Dark. I saw my first game on July 10th, 1954 at the Polo Grounds. I was 8 years old, and I have a vivid memory in that game of Alvin Dark hitting a grand slam home run into the upper deck in left field. We were seated in right field, and in my mind's eye, I could still see that ball traveling into the upper deck. There were only 2 decks at the Polo Grounds, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Michael Berlin.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for the memories. 2 things. One, the White Shadow.
Yes.
Bruce Potrow got that idea up at Kutcher's.
Oh, did he?
Watching Dave Gershon, who was the coach of Hillcrest High School, play. So just as an aside, sadly, when I saw Alvin Dark play also a long time ago at Ebbets Field, there's only 2 things I remember, and I'm glad to hear how you compared him to Rizzuto. I was very impressed. One, in anger, I guess in the clubhouse, I think he threw a stool and his finger got caught and he lost a piece of his finger. And the other thing I remember, sadly, is I always thought of him as a racist. I don't know why. I just remember the stories around him.
Yeah.
Yes, there was stories like that. I
Right.
remember
And
that.
it's sad that when I think of Dark, the first thing I think of was, yeah, it was the Giant manager, but they always had a lot of black and Hispanic ball players, and he was a racist, and that's why he was out.
There are stories about that, and I wonder if that also affected the writers. We just don't know because we can never poll the writers. They never talk about their vote or why they voted. I would love to know who voted against Hank Aaron and who voted against Tom Seaver
Or Mays.
Willie Mays.
Mays
I know.
or McCovey.
It's funny. The other thing you talk about the morality, I always think of, was it Kekich and Peterson switching wives? I mean, boy, how times have changed over
Oh
time,
yeah.
But anyway, thank you for that. Thanks for
I'm pretty sure, Michael, that one of our speakers, I don't know who, said that before Dark passed, he went around and apologized to anyone on the Giants he might have hurt or slandered,
Yeah.
whatever. So
And as I said, I feel terrible myself personally that that's a memory that has always lingered 50 years later, that when I think of Dark, that's always what comes to my head. And when you were talking, I thought somewhere in that vote, I think there was always that taste about something that had happened. True
Well,
or you know what I mean?
Rizzuto also had a platform for decades, his announcing career.
Sure.
Right.
He had the great affection of New Yorkers. Even if you weren't a Yankees fan, if you were a Mets fan, you still watched. You still enjoyed his take, his banter with Bill White, especially. I mean, there was nothing like Phil Rizzuto and Bill White in the booth, and there was a lot of goodwill that was fostered. Dark went a different way. He went into coaching and managing, etc. So had he gone into announcing, maybe he would have remedied some past misdeeds a little earlier, and maybe he would have had a bigger platform to do it on.
Dave, you're such a prolific writer. I don't think there's a biography on Dark. Maybe you should look into that.
There's a memoir that he wrote, but I have thought about that, Gary.
You should do it.
There's so many players that have written memoirs, managers, but never an in-depth biography, and I'm wondering if that might be one of my projects in the future.
Go for it. Ed Freer, you're up.
Hey, Ed.
I'm interested in that.
Ed, you're freezing up.
Too, but I mentioned this thing before.
Okay.
Oh, I am okay. I mentioned before. I don't mean to freeze up. The Al Dark. This picture that painted of him as a racist. I mean, he probably was. He could very well have been a racist. We don't know exactly, but sometimes when the media paints a picture, you can't change it. So this anecdotal information, and maybe David can look into this for me. Speaking of Las Vegas, I mentioned before, one time I was at Treasure Island Casino in the sports book, and the person taking my wager saw my Giant hat and said he was related to Al Dark. And he was definitely a Spanish fellow. And, it kind of took me back because I said, everything I've heard about Al Dark is just the opposite. And if David ever, or maybe has already, looked at his marriage and who the kids were, and were there any Hispanic family in his biography, it would be interesting to know, because sometimes you can't clear these things up once the ball gets rolling,
right?
And maybe there is something there. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that? Do you have any? Do you know his family? His
no,
relatives?
not really, Ed. It's one of those things that's going to require a little bit of legwork, and unfortunately, a lot of the players who played for Dark are gone. So we rely on newspaper accounts, magazine accounts, oral histories if they exist. So the anecdotes are all that we have, but that's kind of unfortunate. But even if you are able to interview people, memory fades, memories change. I know going through the 78 book, I could swear certain things happened. I could swear a certain person was responsible for saying a line in a movie or a TV show. And I have a pretty good memory when it comes to TV. And no, it was the other person in the scene. So I had to make sure, okay, let me rewrite this. I can't just rely on my memory.
Find out his nephews, maybe, or his ancestry that, well, just to see that maybe there is a possibility that this curtain could be moved a little bit, but I have no idea.
If I go forward with a project, and that's a big if, because I have a lot on my plate at the moment, it's something that I definitely will consider, going down the routes that you mentioned.
Okay, and thanks for that model train info.
Oh, that's a great interview with Mandy Patinkin and Tom Snyder. Mandy Patinkin said that when he has an overage, that's when a film company contracts you to work for a certain period of time. And if they go over that time period, they have to pay you more money. He said he uses that to buy more model trains, more equipment.
I guess I don't know who's Mandy Patinkin.
Mandy Patinkin was Homeland. He's an actor, a singer.
Yeah,
he was a
famous singer, and he was in Yentl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is on later tonight.
The Princess Bride.
There's a guy in Chicago Hope.
Oh, the Princess Bride. I know that one.
Montoya, Prepared to Die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Prepared to Die. Yes, I know. Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Your job is on the line.
Hey, Dave, before I go to Bill, irregardless of baseball, the book 78.
Yes.
Your favorite music or TV moment of that year?
Oh, gosh. Well, TV, WKRP in Cincinnati. I had the opportunity to go to the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention a few years ago, and Howard Hessman and Jan Smithers were on a panel. And I told Howard Hessman that in front of the whole crowd that the show came on when I was 11, and 10 years later, I was at the University of Maryland as a student, and I got a job in Bethesda at a radio company. This company owned 10 stations nationwide, and I got a summer job there because of WKRP. Radio looked like something I would enjoy. And I told him I've been a lawyer in entertainment, a TV news writer. I've written several books, but it all started because of WKRP.
That's great.
And he was very proud of that.
All right, now I don't rate them as far as Ginger or Marianne, but Bailey Quarters or Jennifer Marlowe.
That is an age-old question, and I'm going with Bailey.
All right.
I think what happens, we did this last time with Ginger and Marianne. When you're a kid, it's Ginger, but as you get older, you realize it's Marianne. So it's the same thing. And there was just something about Bailey. There was this innocence, and she had this presence.
There was a sexiness to her too.
Yeah. And there was never a competition between the two. In fact, they joined forces a few times. Jennifer Marlowe was always somebody that everybody in the station could rely on. And my favorite line ever in WKRP is when Andy Travis is negotiating with, I think it was Venus. It might have been Johnny, but I think it was Venus. And Gary Standy, as Andy Travis, says, "Come on, if we pay you that's almost as much as we pay Jennifer." So aside from Mr. Carlson, she seemed to be the highest paid person in the place, and probably the most valuable.
Thanks, Dave. Bill Clank, you're up.
Thank you very much, Gary. And David, thank you for joining us again. I really enjoyed your book, 1962.
Thank you.
But that's a special year for me and the Giants, and just so many good things happen. So it's on my treasured. It's in my Giants section of my books because whatever. A couple of quick things. One, a photo I'll share with you. Um, Rizzuto never referred to him as Bill or Bill White. He was always White.
Right.
Always White.
Exactly.
And Bill White, because I'll give him the respect he's due, Bill White always did the ninth inning. The reason is because Rizzuto got out of there after the eighth so he could beat the traffic across the bridge to New Jersey. So you never got him. And of course, if it went to extra innings, well, White was stuck.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Bill White. I'm not falling into Rizzuto.
Look at that.
There is an actual Reggie candy bar framed in pinstripe, and what's beneath it is his 400th and 500th home runs.
Wow.
I saw number 400. That's the one on the left there at the stadium on August 11th, 1980, when I was up in northern New Jersey for a convention. And I said to the guys I was with, well, we can go one of 4 nights. When do you want to go? They said, let's go tonight, the first night, Monday. Pick the right night. He hit number 400 into the left field stands.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not a Yankees fan, but boy, that was a thrill watching him hit number 400. The other thing, non-visual on that, I'm going to give this the quote that it's due. It is an actual quote from Ken McKenzie, who was he was a modest pitcher, but, a pretty smart guy. As far as I could tell, pretty much a straight shooter.
Right.
I preface his remarks with that. Here's what he had to say about Dark and the 1964 Giants. This is an exact quote. The 1964 Giants should have won the pennant, except Mays, Cepeda, and McCovey hated Alvin Dark. If McCovey hit anything that year, it was when I wasn't looking. Anyway, in the 7th inning of the last game of the season, Alvin got a call on the dugout phone. It was Chub Feeney, just to let him know he was fired. Alvin had crossed up the administration by holding a team meeting on Saturday to tell them that he hadn't been informed that Snyder was ineligible as of Friday. He went on the waiver list. And had he delivered in his pinch hitting role, we could have won and lost the pennant in one at bat. Like I said, we should have won. Ken McKenzie. So, I've always not treasured that quote, but, I take it as a quote that I don't think McKenzie had an axe to grind, and he was a literate guy. But that's an interesting thing about Snyder and being put on the waiver list, and I guess certainly him crossing up the administration by telling him, well, I got fired. Before you hear it from anybody else here in the clubhouse, I'll tell you, I got fired. So he was a man of strong words. In the Giants yearbooks, David, he was always pictured with his very happy family.
Yeah.
So, at the time those pictures were being taken, or shortly thereafter, I guess that's when he took up with the United Airlines stewardess. But that's a story for one of your other books.
But he did marry her, and they had a long, loving marriage from all indications. So
that's
it wasn't
good.
a fling. It wasn't just someone he picked up in a bar on a road trip. He fell in love.
A second time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Coleman.
Hi, David. I never dreamed that I'd come to a New York Giants meeting and hear about Inigo Montoya and WKRP, but I love it. And Bailey is my choice also.
Oh, great.
And the best line was, "Oh, the humanity," as the turkeys were falling from the air.
As God is my witness, I thought
I thought they could fly. I love that. I absolutely love that. And then you have Les Nessman doing the news. There's flattery all over the place. Oh my God, the humanity.
One of the interesting things about WKRP from a production standpoint, it was an MTM Enterprises show. Mary Tyler Moore and her then husband, Grant Tinker, formed their own company so they could control and own the Mary Tyler Moore show. Of course, we know that Mary Tyler Moore spun off Rhoda and Phyllis. WKRP was not shot on film like the others. It was shot on videotape. And I wonder if it was shot on film, would that have added to its dimension? Would it have lasted another couple of seasons? It lasted 4 seasons. And then in the early 90s, there was a revival, reboot with some of the original characters in first run syndication.
I did want to make some comments about Al Dark and Phil Rizzuto. One is, as Gary said, later in Al Dark's life, I believe he, so to speak, saw the light and realized that his behavior was racist and wrong, and did go forth to apologize to many people for how he behaved. And I don't think that Willie Mays exactly hated Al Dark. And in answer to Mars's question, I don't believe the Latin players in the Giants did think ill of Mays for defending Dark, because my understanding is Mays told them, "Don't worry, I will take care of this."
Yeah.
And in essence, he did, and he was fired. And so I think the Latin players thought that Mays had their back.
Right.
As far as Dark, I mean, I know 3 teams that we discussed 2 of them where Dark did not get along with his players. The Giants, the Padres, but I think it was Sal Bando on the A's who said publicly he could not manage a meat market. And I mean, the A's players hated him. And so, I mean, that goes a long way in terms of if you're going to get into the Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee, when your players don't like you, it makes it harder for you to get in, even though it's as a manager.
Right. I also wonder if that's a personal conflict. I've heard actors talk about directors. There was a famous actor, and I don't want to say the name in case I'm getting the identity wrong, but who said, "I've had 3 or 4 good directors. The rest were traffic cops." And some players might feel that way too. Also with Mays, my understanding from everything I've read, and certainly people in this room have read more than I have, he adored, idolized Leo DeRocher. So if you have Leo DeRocher up here, everybody else is going to be down here, no matter who you are.
But I'm saying Mays liked Dark. I'm not saying Mays disliked Dark. I'm saying Mays actually did like Dark. They got along well as teammates, and he did, in some respect, I don't want to say defend, but he kept things in check long enough for the season to end. As far as Rizzuto goes, Rizzuto was he played for one team, and it was the Yankees.
Right.
He played in 5 consecutive World Championship teams and had 2 others to go with it.
Sure. And he gets into Cooperstown, and I'm not saying that he didn't earn it, but when you have a platform for decades and you're telling stories about playing with Mantle, with Berra, interviewing them sometimes, when you're talking about playing against the great American League players of the day, that seeps into the consciousness, and you start to identify Phil Rizzuto with these players. Which, one thing if it's on the back of a baseball card or in a biography or an article or something like that, but 162 games a year we're hearing this, and that just cements a feeling, in my opinion, that, oh, he played on these great teams. These great teams had several players in Cooperstown. He belongs in Cooperstown.
I agree with you that, listen, he was beloved.
Yeah.
And on the radio, he had that chance every single day to promote himself. I mean, he wasn't promoting himself, but to promote himself. And that makes a difference also. I mean, Al Dark didn't have that, and Al Dark was not beloved. And so it does make a big difference. I agree with you.
Rizzuto was entertaining. Yogi was revered. Nobody doesn't like Yogi. Right?
But I think also, if you're going to broadcast for as long as Rizzuto did, that is another factor that you sort of tack on to. You know what? He was a player. He was an 7-time All-Star, I think he's a 5-time or 7-time All-Star, MVP, did all of these things, and now he's still in baseball for the rest of his life. And so if you're on the Veterans Committee and you're voting for someone, I think you should factor in his post-baseball career.
That's
Post-playing career.
that's an interesting point, Norm, and I agree with you that you have to take the totality of circumstances, the totality of their contribution. Somebody said to me the other day, it's a hall of fame, not a hall of skill. So that there's something to be said for that as well.
And don't forget, Dark made Mays the captain, and they were great teammates.
Yeah.
But well, thank you, David. I really enjoyed today's presentation.
Thanks, Norm. Renee, you're up.
David, it was really interesting, and your book sounds great. I could relate to that because I'm from New York, so that period I do remember all that stuff.
Well, you'll get a real kick out of chapter 2 because that covers the blizzard.
Oh my God. Well, I was working at Madison Square Garden. I was doing season tickets, and one of my coworkers was a huge Yankee fan. Bought I don't know how many Reggie bars. Refused to eat any of it.
Yeah,
he kept it on the refrigerator in his house. He boasted about like, oh, it's gonna last forever. I says, you're gonna let it sit there, right? You're not gonna. But he was proud of it. He really was. He was a big fan of Reggie and stuff like that. I don't know if I missed it, but Gary asked you a question. One of them was, what's your favorite music of that time?
Oh, I'm sorry, music. Well, Billy Joel.
Okay.
The Stranger songs were out that year. The Stranger album was a top seller, and songs like My Life were all over top 40. Donna Summer and Last Dance.
It was a fun year. It was such a fun year.
I mean, for me, very, very young, but especially the after-hour clubs in the city, the no-name, rock clubs and disco clubs and stuff. I mean, I went through all that stuff. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of those because I totally forgot about that. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
I hated it, although I picked up a lot of women.
Thank you, Mars, for that. Did anybody not ask a question who wanted to? Howard, you're up.
Yeah, hi, Dave. First of all, I read 1962. Great book.
Thanks.
Couple of things from the 70s I remember regarding baseball. Kind of regarding baseball. I remember when the White Sox had Disco Demolition Night.
79, yeah.
79, and that blew up in everybody's faces. Literally, I think it almost burned down the ballpark. But as a former Bronx boy and a longtime Giant fan back in those days, my whole family disliked the Yankees and the Dodgers. But we watched the World Series every year, no matter who was playing. And it was in 77 when we were watching the national telecast on, I guess it must have been ABC because Howard Cosell was doing it.
Right.
And outside Yankee Stadium, the building was on fire. The Bronx is burning.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most famous line Cosell ever said, except for Down Goes Frazier.
Yeah.
And I read the book, being an ex-Bronx boy, and I felt bad about it, although I had been out of the Bronx, quite a while by that time already. You must be familiar with that incident, and
oh, sure,
a big part of the 70s.
Yeah.
What was your take on it?
On the book or the?
Well, you wrote about it I'm sure it's mentioned in the book, hopefully.
Well, are you talking about what's my take on Cosell or
on the whole situation with, it was part of 70s culture. Jimmy Carter walked through the Bronx, the South Bronx, and then the Yankee Stadium was burning in the background. Yeah. That certainly belongs in your book, I would think.
Well, yes and no, because it's already been covered in Mailer's book that you just showed. So I didn't want to duplicate, and I was under a certain restriction in pages. I always say in interviews, if I wrote the book I wanted to write, the book would be 700 pages. But I can't write 700 pages thinking someone's actually going to read it. We just don't have that patience anymore. We don't have those tastes anymore. So I synthesized as best I could to give you a flavor of what life was like in 78. I could have done 100 pages on Happy Days. I could have done 100 pages on the blizzard and the impact. but I tried to hit the high points, the blizzard, casino gambling in AC for the first time. Atlantic City finally gets gambling. The cultural changes. I mentioned American Hot Wax, the Buddy Holly story. We also had Grease. Greece was a dominant cultural icon at that time. Some icons are with us for just a brief moment and they fade. Greece is still around. It's still performed on stage.
I've seen it. I've seen it on
Broadway. So it was just a fun year. And coming out of 77 and reading Ladies and Gentlemen, The Bronx is Burning, and also seeing the miniseries, I tried not to duplicate what he had done, because he covered in that book a lot of very serious topics, and one of them being the 1977 mayor's race in New York City, the battle between Koch and Cuomo, etc. And I tried to keep politics out of this one. 62 had a lot of JFK stuff, but I didn't really want to go that route in 78. I wanted to just keep it mostly to baseball and then surround those anecdotes, that research, with the cultural things that I mentioned.
Thank you. Great presentation tonight.
Thank you. Charles, why don't you wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm well into your book. I absolutely love it. I've not read the 62 book. I know how it ends for the Giants. Not good. But I love the 78 book. A lot of it brought back so many memories, because I was in the 8th grade then, hard to believe.
Yeah.
And it just like the stuff that I remember, that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. But I grew up in San Francisco, which is a totally different experience than being on the East Coast.
Yeah.
But your book is absolutely wonderful, and I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Bill has another question.
Bill?
Just a quick comment, a follow-up on the Sal Bando statement. Tom Edelman, in his book I just finished, Long Ball, that talks about the entire 1975 season, but I'm sure we could go back to 74 with Al Dark. Yeah, his indication was, from various players that he interviewed, that Dark was basically taking orders from Finley. You know, as much as we talk about Steinbrenner and being overriding, I mean, Finley was just over the edge, and he was on the phone. I'm sure in 75, as the players said, but also probably in 74, telling Dark, and that's probably, I'm sure Dark was glad to put Finley behind him.
Thank you, Bill. Steve, you returned. Did you want to make a comment or have a question regarding Dark or anything?
I want to. Am I muted?
No.
Okay. I want to apologize, David. I had a Zoom with old friends that get together. It just happened to be the same night, but I was able to get back. I'm just curious. Would you be interested in doing something with my group again, like you've done?
Yeah, just send
I'll
me.
Send you. It won't be for a while, but I'll send you an email and we'll make something work.
All right, Dave, I got one last question for you.
Sure.
Whatever happened to Chuck in Happy Days?
That's one of the great
mysteries.
Great questions.
He went upstairs and never came down.
2 actors played him. The original concept of the show was the middle child in this Midwestern family. The child played by Ron Howard, or teenager played by Ron Howard. Somebody decided at the network to make Happy Days a live action sitcom. And there's one episode where the layout of the living room is like it was with the one camera version. Then they changed it so that the door is on the right side of the screen. They moved Fonzie above the garage, and that gave him access to the Cunningham household, more interaction. And Chuck, there was no reason to have Chuck anymore. But what's interesting is if you watch the reunion special, which may be on YouTube, they bring the 2 actors back and the cast stands up and applauds, because you get this job, it's on a network show, and then you're gone. And the show goes on for 10 years.
You never hear about the shark anymore either.
The shark. Well, that's a misnomer too, because they talk about jumping the shark as a phrase that indicates a show's gone too far. Well, Happy Days lasted another 6-7 years or something like that after that episode, that 3-part premiere where they go.
I didn't realize it was on that much longer.
Yeah, wow. that was the 77 season premiere, I believe.
Yeah.
So the show goes off the air in 84.
Wow.
How much damage did it really do? Ron Howard leaves. They get more cast members in. It's still going. It's still bringing in ratings. It's still making money. Advertisers are buying time. I mean, that's the bottom line. So it's a cute phrase to say they've gone too far. You can say too far creatively, but if people are still tuning in, and MASH in 1982 was not the MASH of 1976, but people were still turning on CBS.
All right, why don't we all give it up for David Krell? Again,
thank you, David.
Here's the book.
Thank you, David.
The best way is, Dave said, through Nebraska Press to save 40% off.
Oh, yeah.
Dave, we hope you have something on the horizon where you could come back and visit us.
Well, I do, but I don't think there's a Giants connection. I have a biography of Bo Belinsky coming out in late August.
Make sure you send it out to me, and I will at least send it out to all of our members. And work on that Alvin Dark book, okay?
Can I ask him one more question?
Rigby was Bo Belinsky's manager, David.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Can I ask David one more question?
Hurry up, Mars.
David, have you ever read The Power Broker or watched? Evidently I preceded you because I'll be 78 this year. My favorite programs were The Twilight Zone, The Untouchables, Playhouse 90, and my favorite rock groups were Cream, The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Airplane, Elvis, Chuck Berry. So that's where I grew up. But The Power Broker, written by Robert Caro, a 1,300-page book, won a Pulitzer Prize. Did you ever read that?
Yes, I think I read it. I've read it at least once. I might have read it twice, actually.
That's a definitive story about the Robert Moses period, building all those bridges and tunnels and how many people were displaced. Yeah. And eventually, because he didn't want to build the Giants and Dodgers new ballparks, although he did offer O'Malley the swamps in Flushing Meadows, and O'Malley turned it down.
Allegedly, O'Malley said, whether they're 3,000 miles away or 3,000 miles, whether they're 3 miles away or 3,000 miles away, they're not the Brooklyn Dodgers if they're not in Brooklyn. Doesn't matter. If they're not in Brooklyn, I can't call them the Brooklyn Dodgers. So what does it matter where I wind up?
True, but lack of foresight.
All right. Sure. We will, David, again, great job.
Thank you, sir.
Stuff. We will reconvene in 2 weeks. Happy Passover, happy Easter, and all that stuff. We will hang out, talk Giant baseball if you want. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.